We're set.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order and do you want to do what do you want to just tell everybody who's here? So the people online know.
Sure. So in attendance, we have Annette Bennett, Annette Bennett, David Kinzinger, Ashley Kawashima, Larry Hofstad, Sarah Holmgrain, Jalen Pomrenke, Aaron Michael, and Darcy Ewert.
Okay. Like to make a motion to approve would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting of October 26th?
So moved. I second.
Okay. Are there any amendments? They look fine to me. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes from the October 26th meeting, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, are there any amendments? Are there any amendments? Does anybody have any amendments for the meeting agenda for tonight? Any other things that somebody wants to talk about that's not on here? And if not, then I would ask for an approval of the meeting agenda.
I move to approve the meeting agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, okay, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Okay. And do we have anybody online that's called in?
Well, let's see. I believe it looks like Chad Wright is online. He's probably listening in. He
Okay,
hasn't let me know that he wanted to speak.
okay. Okay, Chad, unless you want to chime in. Okay. Okay, and then under new business, we have basically, it's a summary of the ideas from our October 26th meeting. And basically what I tried to do, and feel free if you think I missed something, we can talk about it, or something that we need to highlight, or something we need to leave out.
This is Sarah Holmgrain. I was on the manufactured housing. I was thinking just the smaller lot size, the 50 by 100, instead of the minimum standard that we've had for a while of 8,000. Just because they can't accommodate that, and it could be then a less expensive option for people if the lot is smaller.
Okay.
That was my only change probably, or idea different.
8,000.
Yeah, so a 5,000 square foot lot instead of an 8,000 square foot lot. And if you've ever looked at any of the platting, the city, before it was a borough, has tons of lots that are actually platted, and they're all 50 by 100 foot lots. But we always struggle with that with planning and zoning on what we could do with those because of the size of the lots. They would have to be replatted before we could sell them. Actually, some of them we did sell, and we had to pass a waiver just to be able to sell them. So yeah, that can probably.
I could, if anybody's interested in what it kind of looks like, I just had our rental at 500 Fram Street that's been around since 1933. I had one of the local surveyors go mark the four corners because I wasn't sure where it was at, and that's a 50 by 100. And the house that it sits quite comfortably on it. So if just people are curious, I guess, for anything to get a real sense of what 50 by 100 and a house size, what you would look at. We don't have the setbacks necessarily that are required because of the age of the house, but you get an idea of the lot size visually, I guess, is sometimes easier.
Right, and would you also, in that proposal, I forget what the coverage of a lot you can have currently.
I didn't think about that. I forgot about that. I just was looking at what a double wide length and width, that would still allow a 20-foot setback on the backside, 10 on each side, and I believe a 20 on the front. So I was
Okay.
still looking at the setback size, but whether it would still occupy the majority of the lot, it probably would.
What would be the
Especially-
dimensions of that type of dwelling?
I didn't bring my paperwork to Anchorage with me. It's back at home, but I can look it up.
Yeah, okay, I'm trying to think. I think it would be in it because I think, and that's a question we can look up in code to see. But, you know, everything that's in the building code, you know, you can either change it through a variance or go through the actual process of changing it. And I would assume that if we did go forward with an idea like this, Sarah, it would require quite a bit of work on planning and zoning to make it fit into what we have. So, does anybody have any discussion on that? Whether that's a good or bad idea to have smaller or larger lots? And this is on Sarah's proposal for manufactured homes.
I think it's always a good idea to have options for things, so I'm in favor of it. But I don't understand like the setback thing, like what is? I'm on the same page. Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
that's,
cause you have to have, is it 15 feet on the sides? Okay.
it's complicated. It depends upon, since this would be residential. You basically have to be able to drive a fire truck in between
Mhm.
the buildings. You know, that's the minimum. So you can go into a planning and zoning process and get a variance, you know, so you can build up to that, but you're supposed to originally start off with 20-foot setback in the front and 10 feet on the sides, unless it's a corner lot, then it's gotta be more. But 50 by 100 is a pretty small lot. But the advantage of 50 by 100 is you can get a lot more lots in a certain area. And then, you know, if you can get, you know, 3,000, you know, every third, if you had standard size lots and you went to 50 by 100 lots, you know, for every tiny lots you have, you could add another lot for every 3. So you gain quite a bit. So I mean, but the idea is affordability. That's one way to look at it.
I mean, I grew up on a 50 by 100 lot in a trailer and it, you know, I survived.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, does everybody understand what, I mean, this is an idea that if we move fast on it, we could actually make it happen, you know, in a shorter period of time. Although nothing happens in borough government in a lot of time, sorry. But, so since we're talking about Sarah's proposal right now, it's number 4 under ideas of what we can do now. And I pretty much cut and pasted most of her verbiage there.
Dave?
No, it's number 1 under ideas that will take a longer time.
Oh, okay.
Dave?
Yeah,
Could I did look up while we were discussing, double wide is 60 by 27 by 60. So 27 feet wide, 60 feet deep.
okay, so how many square feet is that?
1,500. Let me look real quick. I just had it up so I can look online. 1,550. So it's a nice size.
Yeah, so 1,550 on a 5,000 square foot lot, that'd be that under, I want to say 60%. You can't cover more than 60% of
Okay.
the lot.
Well, I wonder if it could be also some of these extra concerns could be addressed. If it's rezoned manufactured, those, obviously you go up the 2 manufactured housing communities that are in Petersburg, they're definitely not 20 feet back from the road. And I mean, because I know it's supposed to be private roads, but some of that could be addressed if it was rezoned in that area, maybe. And those
Right.
exceptions put into the rezoning, if that happens.
Right, no, I understand. Since and I'm sorry, and this would be an idea that I felt that would take a little bit longer period of time than something we could do right away. just because it's got to go through the whole planning and zoning process. After the assembly says, let's move in on the idea. And then I added the verbiage there of possibly selling it, but with some of the same restrictions as what Gary outlined in his proposal for what to do in the Hungry Point substation
that idea.
project.
Yeah, I do too.
So that's something I kind of ad-libbed in there, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Okay, so what I suggest we do is we just kind of go, I'll start at the beginning and we'll go through the whole list. And well, if you guys want to make any changes, Darcy, Aaron, you guys just feel free to chime in. And we'll just go down the list. And so we'll start with ideas we can do right now. We're having a discussion about, which is number one, is purchase the Ocean Beauty bunkhouse. The problem with that is, Sarah, do you have a price for that? Has anybody ever told you how much they want to sell it for?
Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I'll look it up real quick. It's not on the same MLS that we use. They use just the Southeast Alaska multiple listing instead of the Alaska, but the agent, he sent me a flyer not too long ago, and I'll look real quick and see what that was.
Okay, that'd be great. Because a bunch of us have called and they've been non-responsive, so they're
Okay.
not real responsive realtors. And several ideas on that, and one that Darcy had was a blended use for that. And I incorporated that into that. And did you, in your concept on that, did you feel that it could be used for, like emergency housing, and then maybe a couple of floors be turned into condos, or what was your vision there on that?
I was just asking about Ocean Beauty, as I see Ketchikan and they use their boardwalks and have apartments, condos, restaurants, coffee shops, stuff like that. And that's where, when people come up, in their yachts, or people come up in these, when we have some, bigger ships coming in and people walk in, that's what they see. Ocean Beauty is a lot of the things that people see. So to me, it kind of seems like it could be something that we could use in our community many different ways. It's really big. And I am curious, Sarah, what the price is of that place. And I was also just asking, what is the price of this? I don't know what the green building is called by Salty Pantry. But that's
the Ocean
smaller.
Beauty bunkhouse.
Okay.
The Ocean Beauty is not for sale. They already sold that. It's just the bunkhouse that's still for sale.
So it's just that green building that you're talking
Yes.
about. Okay, thank you.
775.
775. Okay.
You're right.
One question I do have though with this is, and I've asked this many times, is what problem are we trying to solve with the housing? Because I'm seeing a couple things that are coming up. And I started looking this past week on homeless and housing, and it's huge. It's a huge issue. And so when I'm seeing, using this for emergency bunkhouse, I'm not sure what people are thinking to use this for. Is this just for people in our community? Because if we're going to try and tackle the housing for homeless, there's a lot of other things that I've seen in other cities that they're talking about. You need to have your social services set up, and you need to have meals and clothing and a management system to manage all of this, and security on the property. There's a lot to it. To me, it almost seemed like if people are looking at housing for homeless, that's almost a task force in itself, because there are so many pieces to it. So I kind of would like to know which problem are we trying to solve? Because I see we're trying to look at housing for people that just first moved to our community, affordable housing, homeless, or are we trying to give options for multiple different things? So I'd like kind of just to hear people's response to that, because I'm not sure where to go on it.
So just my thought on that was, I know we have maybe 2 or 3 people that are on the task force that are very interested in the homeless issue. And maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong. And what I was going to suggest was between now and the next meeting that maybe they set up a subcommittee and they look specifically, put something concrete that we could take to the assembly and show to them what their concept is of what to do with the Ocean Beauty bunkhouse. I don't know if you guys would be willing to do that. I mean, is that something, would that, and so in other words, that is, you're right, that is a separate issue than the other housing issues that we're talking about. But it's still part of our mandate, I guess. And I will say that what I'd like to do is clarify with the assembly at, I'll give a report from this meeting and last meeting on kind of where we're going and kind of give them a 30,000 foot view of what we're talking about and see if we can get any feedback from them. And if they come back and say, no, we don't want you going down this rabbit hole, or no, we just think that's a bad idea altogether, then we can focus our energies in a different area. If that makes any sense. So I guess 2 questions. Do you guys want to work on a proposal on your own between now and the next time we meet in December?
I'd be
When is
willing
the
to be a
next
part
time
of it.
we-
Yeah, when is the next? meeting?
December 21st?
Wait, because I'm going to be gone for a while. That's why it's so long away.
December 21.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be out of town? Are you gonna be in town?
Yeah, I'm gonna be out of town for a bit.
I mean, I have rough ideas, sorry, I have rough ideas of what I think we could do with that building. And I think I'd like a better picture or understanding of what you need as a proposal. Like how concrete of an idea, because in general, my thought is transitional housing, you know, and of some part of that, and then a warming shelter, and then a soup kitchen, I think would be pretty good use of that space. And that's just, for me, I haven't really talked officially with anybody else about this, but I think it's also doable to have 24-hour or at least nighttime, like if we're just doing a warming shelter, then that just needs someone there during the night to supervise and make sure that nothing's happening. And that seems a little more realistic to me.
I guess that's what I'm talking about. Just something.
Write that up.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like a grant proposal or something like that, but just kind of,
Cost of things.
yeah, a concept of what, you know, I mean, we have to have at least a concept before we go to the next step. And then we can present that to the assembly and they can say yea or nay on that. And then, you know, then unless you guys can figure out a way to make it happen on your own. But
Like with grants.
Mhm.
yeah,
Would it be possible, does anybody have the building layout? Like, I don't know, Sarah, if you have that, because that would be helpful in creating this plan.
I don't, but I've been through it recently. So what I could do is just if we meet, or I could meet with one of you and just kind of tell you what I've seen and, you know, outside of this meeting and kind of the general layout and what it looks like inside. And just go through that if you'd like.
Okay, I have gone through it, but it's been a while and I don't remember like exactly how many rooms there are on each floor and that.
Yeah, I have some of that information. So I just before I even went in. So yeah, I could, if you guys decide to meet, or I can just meet with you, Annette, and give you the details that I have. And I can also ask the agent to make sure I've got all my information correct.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Sure.
I think that is doable. And then if you guys have some input, then maybe we can meet. And so, yes, we're willing to create a task force.
okay, or a subcommittee. or- I
Subcommittee,
don't know,
whatever it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
A
I
task
would,
force, whatever.
I would not be in my mind being a part of this subcommittee as well too. If you ladies need any question or have any questions or anything, just let me know when you're planning to meet up and I will definitely be there.
Sounds good.
Okay, yeah, it sounds good. And then you can focus specifically on the, on the green building.
Can I just ask one more question on some of this? When I was looking at Detroit is doing this, Austin, Texas, Seattle, Portland, Everett, Washington, they've looked at, you know, starting up little villages, little communities, even transitional housing apartments. And one thing I was reading across a bunch of them was housing wasn't enough. It was, they were saying to get all these other pieces you needed, because housing sometimes may bring other people. I know in Minnesota, where we're from, we had a transition shelter, and you ended up getting people from Florida, from Texas, you know, and it's not always just our community. And so that's just something that I was seeing people say, you know, make sure you are looking at all of the other pieces that are needed. You know, like you mentioned, the kitchen for meals, and stuff like that, but how much can our community take in if people come in? Because once they hear, it does spread and people come into the community too. And so that was just a factor they were saying, you know, to have regulations in it to deal with this, because you will get other things that will come out of this. Some other problems will occur with just housing. So I don't know, just some things to look into that.
Good point.
I think my thought is that we would use a housing first model, which does address, you know, having connections. And I think both Ashley and I are pretty well connected within several of the agencies in the community that work with a lot of people that are experiencing homelessness in Petersburg. I think that using that model should address that, and that we need more people to come to the community right now to build positions. And I think if people have some place to stay, then they're more likely to enter the workforce than they are if they're sleeping in a tent.
And to like add on to that, I think just like the importance of acknowledging, like when we're talking about housing, there's so many people in our community that are currently experiencing homelessness already, or are experiencing housing insecurity and are on the verge of homelessness. And so to know that like we have resources and that we're having these conversations is like super important to, you know, take into consideration everybody like we're doing, which I really appreciate.
I think some of these problems, quote unquote, that we're talking about, like they're still happening right now. They're just kind of spread out. And I think if we did have one area where a lot of people are living, yeah, it's going to look like that's the problem, but that's not the problem. It's just it kind of concentrated to one area maybe. But I think Petersburg's a caring community, and I think that's going to really make a big difference.
Yeah, like in my situation, a week before I got this, I should probably clarify. It wasn't the mental health grant. It was my friend Carla at Search who helped me secure this grant. It was through the Alaska Housing. It was Alaska's or Housing Stabilization Rent Relief is what it was. And you two ladies know a lot about that. Up until about a week before I got that, I mean, I was considering going to Juneau and staying with a friend of mine there after surgery. So I've been sober going on 3 years and stuff. And I get the, you know, the cliche or whatever of problems happening. And I think you're right. I know you're right. It's not just them or us. It's spread out. It may seem like that. And that's just my personal view. And I know a bunch of other people that are trying really hard also that deserve a chance, you know, medical issues, what have you, getting sober. I think it's real important that the support is here for sure. And of course, there's got to be rules for sure. It's got to be overseen. You know, probably Petersburg residents would have, you know, first come or whatever. I see it as really good. I mean, you know, people that are in domestic violence things where they can come, you know, maybe change some of those places into small apartments where a single mother with some kids can go if need be or whatever. And then have the single bunks for, you know, X amount of people. I understand your concern for sure. And I've been doing my research on it, and I don't know, I'm totally into it. I'm totally volunteer. I would do whatever I can. So that's pretty much why I'm here, is to give my life experience. And so, you know, there was a time that I wasn't, you know, sober and productive and stuff. It's, you know, it's just hard, you know, if you do something good, 10 people will hear about it. You do something bad, 100 people's going to hear about it. So I think there's a lot of that too. And anyway, that's my thing, or what I have on that.
Okay, thanks. So let's try and move on to the next one here. And, oh, sorry.
Can I just get clarification of who would like to be on this subcommittee, just to make sure that I have everybody?
Me.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay, several people mentioned that we need to have a housing needs assessment. It's also been an idea that's been floated by the borough manager, and he actually checked with the consulting company that did the master plan for Petersburg. And I believe that he came back with a bid of $76,000 is what they would charge to do a housing needs assessment. I'll personally say that I was rather skeptical of why do we need to spend $76,000 to have somebody tell us we have a housing problem. But when you guys pointed out to me that we needed to have this documentation before we can get grant funding, then that kind of puts it in a different light. You know, and I don't work in that field, so I really don't know what's necessary. So if you guys could maybe educate me a little bit more on that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, in regards to that, a side note before I forget though, I've found that it's very helpful. So for the past 6 years, I've run the Project Connect event where we collect data on people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity, and then we submit it to the state for their database. And I've found it very helpful to use that data in conversations that I have with people, even to talk about people are experiencing housing insecurity in the community. Because they're like, oh, you have concrete information in front of me. I didn't know that this was happening. I mean, there are people in our community who don't know that there's housing insecure people or people experiencing homelessness. So on top of needing it for grants and things like that, I think it's just really important to have that information, to also get buy-in from different community members where maybe like different structures might be going into their neighborhoods, so that they really can understand like the importance of that and like why we need these structures and why we need to rezone things. And that community buy-in, I think, is really important to make the things that we're trying to change successful also. As far as my knowledge about, I mean, there are different federal and state grants that even put preference on the information that we submit for the Project Connect. If we have that data, they would give us preference if we had a housing project because we've submitted that data. So we would get, I've been told, we would be more likely to get funds than a community that did not do that count, because it's a nationwide like count that they do. And it happens on the same day nationwide. So they give preference to communities that can provide them with that concrete data. So it's kind of the same with the housing needs assessment. I've seen certain bigger grants that they want to see, okay, where is your hard evidence that these are the X amount of people that need housing or need improved housing?
And Joyce, mentioned it in her ideas, that she had, that we can talk about later, but she referenced, a housing need assessment that a housing assessment, and I forget the name of the organization that did it. But she said they had to have that before they could get money. So, I mean, I'd like to, if anybody's got any more information on that, that'd be a lot easier if we go to the assembly and say, look, if we spend this amount of money now, it could possibly lead to X amount of dollars later. Man, we can't get the X amount of dollars later unless we spend this amount of money now. Because that $76,000 is coming out of, your guys' tax money. So that's the rub on that one.
This
Ja-
is
Jalen. Oh, go ahead.
Darren.
Yeah, Aaron?
So I can send you in an email later. There actually is funding to help actually pay for the assessment as well. There's grants to pay for the assessment. And I can send you the information for that as well as the program, what the requirements are for some of these grants, the particular assessment they're talking about. I can send that to you at probably tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, so the next one is, and I think Gary's, Abac's not here, but he sent in a letter. I don't know if you guys had a chance to review it on number 3. And, he was talking about the insulation requirements. And he seemed to think that we could probably do that in-house. And if it's okay with everybody, we'll just have him proceed with a discussion. I guess it would be with Liz.
Well, no,
No, or-
actually,
With,
this body should recommend to the assembly that they direct that this happen.
okay,
So
okay,
that should be in the recommendation.
okay, so that'd be one of the recommendations that we recommend that we do that, right? But if you see his letter, he's talked about how a couple other communities have managed to do that within their own building code.
If we need some more information just for the borough, the national average is R38. And in Minnesota where it gets 30 below, we only need R49 is the recommendation now. And we used to have just 38 in our house now. So, I mean, the borough, just maybe if they know that information about national averages R38, not 60. 60 is a lot. And it's expensive.
Okay. Okay, and then the next idea, and unfortunately Gary's not here because he's traveling, but his suggestion about looking at the Hungary, what they're doing is they're putting another pump station for the sewer on Hungry Point. So they're going to be digging it up anyway. And the assembly has looked at and has given some money to engineering firm to look at the costs associated with that for developing, I believe it was 10 lots, and it was pretty eye-popping, the amount. But Gary's kind of fleshed out a concept here of how to mitigate the costs of that. And it seems like a workable idea to me. I have no idea how enthused the assembly would be about doing something like that. But this is something we need to do right now because Carl wants to put in that pump station and is going to go out to bid for it soon and would like to get it constructed this next summer. So if we're going to do it, we need to move on this recommendation right away. So I'm looking for comments or feedback on it.
I think it makes sense. I'd be in favor.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's really a downside at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I know somebody, a professional, that moved to town, he's got 2 kids in high school, renting a 2-bedroom place, looking for a place or possibly a place to build. So yeah, that'd be great. I mean, more lots. And then like they were saying, some duplexes or something that can rent,
Right.
right? Create an income, more housing. Yeah.
And did you guys like his concept of how to kind of the ground rules that he worked on, just, throwing the lots out there, having some developer down south buy them all and, but this way, if the
Right.
borough's gonna have skin in the game if they do this, because they're gonna have to pay upfront for the cost of putting in the road, the sewer, the water and all that stuff. And, you know, the borough needs to get its money back. So I thought how he outlined how it would work would be a good way to address that.
Agree, for sure.
And and the concept, I thought would also work well with, what Sarah proposed in, what we were talking about for the manufactured homes. Do you have any?
So I should just say that I think it's a great idea as well. However, this will need some kind of a code change.
Yes.
Yeah, because our
Yeah.
rules for how land is sold at this point is nothing like this. But we could, if the assembly says, look into it, the attorney could help us figure out how to make that happen.
Okay. So does everybody understand that? Borough code says we can do things a certain way, we can't do them a different way. But we can change the code. You know, that's not like changing the charter or the constitution or anything. So, okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
really like having that caveat in there that you need to build on it and or live on it for X number of years. I think that's a really important piece because I think up at the airport subdivision, for example, there was a lot of people that bought a bunch of lots and just sat on them for 20 years and they're just now building places. And, you know, I'm in between two empty lots there. I think at least one is being built right now, but it'd be good to have something built and ready to go and not have people just sitting on something when there's people sleeping in their cars.
Okay. All right, and designated public camping area. Annette.
Yeah, and then this one, I just wanted to add in, like it says, for people who are forced to live in a tent, and I just wanted to add in /car, because we have a lot of people that have a car but are living in that, and it'd be nice if they just had a place where they could park a car legally 24 hours and not get a ticket for that. And I think that would be a huge advantage to our law enforcement officers as well, so that they are not having to write tickets for someone trying to live. I know that that's got to be heartbreaking for them to write those tickets, and, you know, they're dealing with the same people over and over, and I'm sure that's frustrating on their end as well.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? All right. Okay, and we've already kind of touched on Sarah's idea on manufactured housing, which I think is a great idea. I mean, I will say that when we tried to rezone some land for or when we tried to change the zoning code and we had manufactured housing in there, there was a few people in the community that were rather upset. That's
I
the
do
end.
remember that. I think some of the difference would be is the area that I picked is right now multifamily. So you could have apartment complex up to 8 units right now built there under the current code. And correct me if I'm wrong, that some of it was to include manufactured and single family home zoning. Whereas this would be specific to manufactured homes. So you would have still a concentration of them in one area, its own little community, but it would be not changing the single family zoning.
Right, I think most people that had heartburn, it was because, like, if somebody had a lot next to yours and that they put in a manufactured home,
Mhm.
that was the main concern that people
Yes,
had.
my recommendation, or I guess would be, is keeping single family, but designating a multifamily zoned area as manufactured, because it is then becomes essentially multifamily
Okay,
in a different way.
and you're okay, once again, with putting in kind of the parameters that, like, that Gary outlined for.
Yeah, I think it's
I mean,
great,
it makes
especially
sense
if
to
you're
me.
selling it at a reduced amount, but then you're turning around and your tax assessment is reflecting the market value. So you get a discount for purchasing it because of the times we're in, but we're not going to back off on what the real value is when it comes to the real estate taxes that need to come back into the borough.
Right, and of course, the borough's long-term interest is the more land we have that's developed, and the more land that's in the tax base. I mean, there's very few businesses that can make a return of 10% a year forever with, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Well, they would
But
get it
it-
on the
it-
land and then they would also get it on the home since it's still considered. I think they still consider it real property. Well, maybe, I don't know how I don't know the real estate taxes for if a manufactured home is placed on there. Because the other ones are on rented space, not owned land.
yeah, I don't know how the assessment would work,
Mhm.
but,
I used to have to pay property tax on the trailer, and I don't know if that's different because it's been a long time. And no idea, but
yeah, no, you have to pay property tax on any,
structure.
whether it's a trailer or a manufactured home
Mhm.
or a mansion. I mean, you know, obviously the rate you're gonna pay is somewhat based upon the value of it. Okay, Joyce isn't here, but her ideas are very intriguing. I think they would take quite a bit of work. Actually, I'll go so far as to say they would take a lot of work to implement them, but I think they're definitely a long-term goal. And I kind of distilled them down to two ideas. One was the land trust idea. And the next one was a tribal and rural program. And that could be done sooner than later, because I know PIA's talked about doing this. But let's deal with the land trust, the first one. And Joyce isn't here to explain this, so, I mean, what do you guys think? Is this something that we should present a concept like this to the assembly?
Maybe you could see if she'd be willing to do a subcommittee similar to the OBI bunkhouse, because it sounded very complicated to me. And she might be able to, you know, get more information from other communities and get more data and what it would entail before going to the assembly in general with that information.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Aaron. I'd be interested in working with her on that. Is there anybody else?
I
It's
could
that-
also,
Go ahead,
Darcy?
sorry.
yeah, this is Darcy. I could do that too because they've had stuff in Sitka and Detroit is also doing that. It's kind of almost a rent to own, and then there are two options. There's a rent to own, and then you also can buy into it and then sell it. And it's good for the resident and for the community. So there's a lot of different options out there. I think they're good.
Yeah,
So I
I'm
could help.
that's good. Yeah, I'm gonna be in sick over Christmas, so I could actually, I know some of the people that are involved in this, so I had planned on kind of setting up a meeting with them and kind of picking their brains on how it all worked. Okay, so is there anything else that we should include at this point? Or is there anything we should leave out at this point? Maybe is probably the better thing to say. Because I will warn everybody, it's really hard to, you know, basically you present something like this assembly, you got like 10 minutes. And if you have a lot of concepts in there, it's really difficult to get them across and get anything done. So we might want to just be thinking about this a little bit between now and our next meeting, if we can drill this down to just like a few things would be better.
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
Well, it seems that everyone is on board with the ideas we can do now. So definitely bring those forward and discuss the ideas, you know, that will take a little longer time. You know, mention them to the assembly. And then maybe what you could say is there are bigger ideas that will take more time and energy, but they're good ideas And if the assembly, you know, chooses or would like us to, we could continue looking into these big ideas.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, it's just a suggestion.
No, that's kind of where I thought we were gonna be heading.
Yeah,
on this.
okay. Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
Okay,
Sounds
any,
perfect.
okay, I guess at this point, we could kind of vote on the concepts that we have outlined here with the changes. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say, it might be nice to get the manufactured home as a part of the ideas we can do now.
Okay.
If that seems like a doable thing, because that does seem like it would really help out a lot of families in that kind of medium area who really want to buy a home but can't afford
Okay,
with the lots right
yeah,
now.
that's a good idea.
I agree, especially, you know, people coming from out of town.
Okay. Okay, great.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Ashley.
Thank you.
So both.
Oh, well.
So Annette, are we talking both ideas 1 and 2 under that category?
Oh, yes, we skipped over that one. I'm sorry.
I mean, that doesn't seem like it would be take a long time either. I mean, I don't know, but. maybe-
Dave knows the planning commission part of it, and I think that's his concern, but it's still something that could probably happen.
Yeah, that's basically, that's what was happening in the zoning change that was put forward, but the zoning, it got passed, but we didn't pass the map.
Correct.
So it's very confusing to people. Actually, it's confusing to people that were even in the middle of the process. But, yeah, my concept was that we try and identify parcels that we have in service area 1 that we can change to accommodate different types of zoning. And my hope on this one was that when and if we do build a new hospital, that some of the property adjacent to that could be specifically zoned for some of these multifamily type housing. I guess that was the impetus of what I'd like to see happen. Because I know it's very difficult to go into existing zone property and change the zoning on it. So my concept was to use new borough land that would be sold or given away, or however you want to call it. And the emphasis on that would be, instead of what our focus has been so far, has been for standard building lots. Instead of having our focus be standard single-family building lots, but whatever land that we put forward in the future be more towards multifamily apartments, condos, duplexes, something that would meet the need of the rental needs of the community right now. So that's kind of where that one came in.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good idea, especially like you said, around the hospital. Cause you'll have like Lori, you know, disabled. She's right there across from the clinic. It's perfect. So there's, yeah, great idea.
And I think, you know, that was like, what, eight years ago that happened. I think there's a lot more awareness of the housing issue now. And I think, I'm hoping that people are a little more aware that, you know, we need to do something about housing. There's people who, you know, we have vacant positions for police officers and dispatchers, and, you know, I think the picture is a lot clearer, hopefully, and that maybe we can get some people a little more open to building and rezoning some areas.
Right. It'll be easier to create new areas with the new zoning in it than it will be to go in an existing neighborhood and rezone parcels in that neighborhood.
Mhm.
That's really difficult to do. That was my concept there. So, I think Debbie, you had the best idea that we move forward with this list we have right now. And that, so let's take a quick vote, just get everybody on the record.
I have a motion in a second.
Yes, thank you.
So the motion is to move forward with the ideas we can do now and then ideas that will take a longer time. And then hold off on the big ideas section. Is that, am I understanding that correct?
No, the motion would be the ideas we could do now would include the ideas that will take a little bit longer. And then those we'd move forward with now. And then we present the ideas that will take a longer time, the ones that Joyce flushed out.
The big ideas.
The big ideas that we would, if the assembly so chose, we would move forward on that after
After this.
this.
So moved? That work?
Yes.
We need a second. Second? Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Annette
Yes.
and Darcy,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and Aaron. Oh, and, sorry. Thank you, Aaron, and Jalen. Sorry, Jalen.
Yes, it's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion carries. Okay, let's see. The next item on our agenda is, are there any other discussion items?
Oh, do we need a motion for the subcommittee? Can we just create that?
I don't think you do.
Okay.
And I'm gonna look into whether or not we have to notice a subcommittee meeting, and I will let you know. Yes.
Okay. Any other ideas? Any discussion items? Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for your
Thank you.
time.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.